We continue with this time with an update and input from Denmark by Professor Mats Melby. He is Director General of the Danish Statens Serum Institute, which is so he's Camilla Stoltenberg's Danish counterpart, so to speak. He is also a professor at the Copenhagen University and the University of Stanford. And we look forward to having the update and input from Denmark, please.
Thank you very much. I have a cold, but hope to make myself understandable. And my second announcement will be that I'll do a little like Camilla Stoltenberg. I'll depart from what I have been asked to talk about today, simply because I'm not too much into the legal aspects of this, but I'll shortly mention some of it, nevertheless. And I'll actually start with this. So in Denmark, we have for many years have a law that exempts registered research from informed consent, provided that the research product really adds to our present knowledge. That makes it very simple, also because when we actually looked at the biological samples and whether we should create or develop a specific biobank law, we decided that we would not go that way, as you have done and other Nordic countries, but would implement the special issues relating to biobank material into existing law. And doing that, we decided to actually define a biological sampling or a collection of biological samples as a register. That made it easy to implement, but it has some caveats, and I'm not sure that it's really of your interest to go into these in details. But I would say, with respect to research on biological materials, you need scientific ethics approval, and they will look at your product and they will exempt from informed consent as it stands presently in more than 90% of the situations. There are certain situations where you have to actually go back and ask the persons behind the biological specimens in the biobanks of consent to actually use the specimens. One of them is when you do whole genome sequencing or exome sequencing. But for instance, when we do whole genome amplification, so when we actually do genotyping studies, most of those situations are, as it stands presently, exempted from informed consent. Right now, we are sitting in a group discussing certain changes of the Danish law. And one of the models that has some interest right now is to actually make even more use of the IT infrastructure that our society is built on. And we have something called eBox, which is an IT or a mail that actually goes to every citizen of Denmark electronically. And we're discussing whether, instead of asking of informed consent when we do whole genome sequencing, that we might instead consider sending all these persons an electronic mail informing them that their biological specimen is now used for this particular study, and that they can opt out if they don't want that to happen. So we don't really require informed consent, but we inform them in great detail about the specific project and their chance to actually opt out if they don't agree to this. The opt-out is a unique system that we developed some years ago, and it's a register where you can actually record your name if you don't want to participate in the system that I've just described. That means that you may have biological specimens lying in biobanks, but your specimen will never be used for research purposes. It's a very neat system because when you're young and primarily male, you may not want to participate in anything, so you'll opt out. And then you become 40 or 45 and you see that some of your friends become sick and need care from the healthcare system, and suddenly you're interested in helping out again, and you can withdraw your name from the opt-out register. Right now, I think that there are something on the order of 500 Danes that have actually recorded the name in this register. That was really a crash course in the legislation that we built all our systems on. And I like the idea that we actually take advantage of being the leading country in e-health adoption in healthcare, and that we now make use of this e-box possibility for future, possibility to approach the individual rather than have to mail them and talk to them. Many of you have seen this slide before, but not all of you, and I just want to introduce the background of the Danish system here, that we have this CPR number in the middle. It was given to all citizens in 1968 for tax purposes, and every recording in the public is linked to this CPR number. Up to your left, you have all the registries that most of you are familiar with, birth registries, the disease registries, the pathology registry. We have a drug or pharmacologic prescription registry, registries on vaccinations, and so forth. It goes on and on. But to your right, you have some of the new facilities, the lab results register, which is still not totally finished, but close to. And what that is a system whereby we record all laboratory results in the healthcare system. And the idea is that we'll provide those for research purposes in the future. So when a physician orders a lab test done on a patient, he is having returned the result electronically, and a copy of that electronic message is going to the authorities, and that's the way we built this lab result register. And you can imagine, we're talking about millions of lab results coming in this way. There's a few other registers that we have developed recently, and I'll just mention a few of them. The first is the Danish Microbiology Database. It's a marvelous database where we use the same principle as with a laboratory database. So a physician may actually send in a specimen that he wants to have analyzed for whatever it might be, a bacteria or a virus or whatever. So he sent that to the Department of Clinical Microbiology, and this department analyzed the specimen and sent back the test report to the physician. But the same as before, we will have a copy of that test report sent to the National Healthcare, through the National Healthcare Data Network, to develop this database on all diagnosed specimens. So it's a nationwide sharing of hospital records on microbiological test results. We use it also for national surveillance for infectious disease and microorganisms. And then, of course, it's a database for research and quality assessment projects. It's marvelous because all the microbiologists have started talking together and make use of their individual results. It's automatic, flexible, and a real-time system. What it also does is that it sends all these recorded results to what we call Sundhed.dk. That's a homepage where you as a citizen can look up what has been happening with you. So all your chart results will be there, including the MIBA results. We have more recently built on MIBA and developed something we call MIB Alert. And that is a special system that works in this way. So when a patient is hospitalized or readmitted or transferred, important information regarding recent findings of multi-resistant bacteria will be given. So if you can imagine you have a patient that comes into an acute clinic, he's comatose, so you can't talk to him, speak with him. But you can get from this system information that this person was just a few days ago diagnosed with multi-resistant bacteria of whatever kind. And it works this way. So actually and this is only working for one county right now, but we are going to actually implement it in all the regions. So it's working for the region around Copenhagen. And you can see this is the electronic patient file, and you can see the red dot up there. That's MIB Alert. So every time you actually key in things into this file, if there's a new finding in the MIB Alert system, it pops up like this. In this case, there's past vancomycin resistant enterococcal that has been diagnosed. And you can use that for research purposes. Another one that we have recently developed is HIBA, a hospital-acquired infectious database that actually follows all the hospital-acquired infections. It builds on the MIBA database I just presented, but also on data on antimicrobiological treatment, and of course the patient administrative data. And there you can follow, all the different infections over time, and whether we have a problem in the hospital care system or not. And again, it can be used for research purposes. Right now we are trying to look into new ways to collect data, and one of them is consumer data that we really want to work with. And it goes this way that as it stands, approximately half of all the big shops where you buy food items are linked up to a specific system that you can actually I'm not sure about the English word here, but you can actually get an app through the system that actually, as soon as you leave the shop, you will get the receipts of all the things. You can see Netto over here, all the things that you have bought in this shop. And you can then work with all that consumer data and actually make it into, you bought that much tobacco or meat or ecological products or sweets or vegetables or whatever. And having that system, you can actually merge it. You can see it on the bottom here. You can merge it with all the other data that we have in the healthcare system and actually get much more detailed information on the individual over time. This is something that we only right now are testing in a research setup, but we hope to make it more broadly available for research in Denmark as such. And then, of course, we have the Danish National Biobank that we developed in 2012 with assistance from Christian Wim, who really was instrumental to this. It stands on 3 legs. First, the physical biobank at my institute that now contains more than 6 million specimens from 3 million Danes, but also a biobank register that you are also developing in this country, where we actually link information. You can see all the gray boxes that are all the different biobanks in Denmark that send in stock information to this central register. And we then link up the person behind these biospecimens with what happened with respect to disease development or drug use, family structure, and so forth. And that way you actually have, you can actually have a scenario where you have a huge cohort of primarily all Danes, because this register now represents 5.4 million Danes and contains information on 22 million specimens, where you can actually follow forward in time a person that gave a specimen, say in 2009, and he develops prostate cancer in 2014, so 5 years later. And these specimens that are taken, say, before you actually develop the disease are extremely valuable for research, for really studying biomarkers for disease development or etiologies for disease development. All this is made available through the internet for researchers around the world. Everyone can look this up. Just go into National Biobank DK. It's anonymous, the system, but having the information, you can then approach the coordinating center on the bottom here and actually get help to actually find and identify the specimens. The biobank that we have receives something on the order of 500,000 new blood specimens a year. And we have a homepage where you can go in here and click up on the National Biobank Register, for instance, and then you'll get into this homepage where you can actually define a lot of things. If you're a researcher and you really want to see whether the specimens that you need for your particular product are available, you can list whatever you like here. You may want the parents to also be born in Denmark, where you maybe also are born yourself, and you may need specific years of birth or whatever. And you can say the gray bars up here, then you can go forward from patient to diagnosis. And here you can actually work with all the different ICD codes, ICD-8 or ICD-10, SNOMED codes. But you can also just write as below that coding system you can see to the left, MAMA, if you're interested in only codes on breast, because you may be interested in breast cancer. And then comes down all the codes on breast of relating to MAMA, and then you can click on all those that are relevant for your particular search. You may want to actually search people with breast cancer, in this case, that do not have diabetes. So then you, in this box here, just say breast cancer patients without diabetes. And as I said, you can do that right now, all of you. Then the next one is sample. And then you can choose one of the different biobanks that are included in this biobank register, including the one at the State Serum Institute. And you can choose whatever specimen type you want. And then finally, this page gives you the chance to actually say, okay, I'm interested in breast cancer patients, but I'm only interested in, say, blood specimens taken 5 or 10 years before these women develop breast cancer. Then you can put it into the blocks here, days before the incident diagnosis or days after, depending on what you like. And I think that's a kind of register that Christian Wiem and others here in this country are trying to implement the same way. Then you can just, the finish is that you are sent this information because you have to put in your email, so you receive all this information from your search by email. How do I get access to all these specimens and the register information? In Denmark, we have developed a special office that actually deals with this. It is placed in what we could call Sundhedsdatastyrelsen. And here you actually apply, irrespective of you want access to biological specimens or register data or both. So you go through this system, and then if you actually are interested in biological specimens, your application is sent to the National Biobank's coordinating center that has a scientific board that looks at it, and all your requests regarding other registries will be dealt with within the Sundhedsdatastyrelsen. And finally, there will be a common report sent back to you on all what you requested. So one entrance is really what my ministry really has worked for quite some time. Who can then gain access? And here we have struggled for quite some time, because this is not a resource or resources that should be used by scientists in the public arena, but also foreign scientists as well as companies in Denmark and outside Denmark. But because we are a small country and this is really a treasure, we have decided that the way that companies can work with these informations goes through collaboration with scientists in Denmark. So companies being in Denmark or outside will have to work through scientists in Denmark at universities or alike. And the companies will never get access to personal identifiable information, and very rarely also the actual blood specimens, because most of that research we assume will be taken care of by the scientists at the universities, but in collaboration with the companies. Just to give you one example of how you can work with all this in a neat way, this is an example that goes back a year or so. So we developed this childhood vaccination database many years ago. It's so that all the family doctors vaccinate our kids, and they send a bill to the authorities with detailed information on what child has been vaccinated and with what vaccine. And we have, based on this, developed this National Vaccination Register. And this particular project wanted to actually study the causes of febrile seizures after MMR vaccination. So the situation is, as illustrated on this slide, that some kids, after they have an MMR vaccination, will have a febrile seizure 9 to 12 days, primarily, after that vaccination takes place, 9 to 12 days. And those of you who have had a kid with that kind of a situation knows how traumatic it actually is. And we wanted to study whether we could actually distinguish the kids before we vaccinate them as to whether they would ever develop febrile seizures or not. So what we did was we actually went to the biobank register and the National Discharge Register and combined these things and actually asked to have information pulled out on 1,000 kids that develop febrile seizures 9 to 12 days after vaccination. We have that information. We can deal with that instantly. And 1,000 kids that develop febrile seizures outside of that window. And then a big control group. And we pulled all the samples from the biobank register in a few months, extracted the DNA and did a GWAS study on this. And found 2 loci specific for kids developing febrile seizures 9 to 12 days after MMR vaccination, and 4 loci for febrile seizures in general. And this is not the audience for really going into details with this, but some of these genes are gene variants are very exciting from a treatment purpose, or at least you may be able to actually talk about developing new drugs to hint this taking place, because some of these were in ion channel areas and so forth. But I'll not go into this. When this was published in Nature Genetics, it got a lot of attention. And I was very pleased sitting at the State Serum Institute, being this public enterprise under the Danish Ministry of Health, to see that they wrote, "The study by Fenstra et al. Embodies this mission, demonstrating the value of public health initiatives and national registries in addressing very specific questions of importance to individuals and society." Now we have, I think Christian mentioned something like 100,000 specimens that have been genotyped in Denmark. I think the number is more likely 140 or so right now. But we want to go even bigger. And based on this study that I just mentioned, you can see that there are potentials here. But the potential that we want to address is not the classical case control study in the GWAS study, where you actually have a case group and a control group, and you study what is different with respect to gene variants. We'll turn the whole thing around and genotype really a massive amount of Danes. And then, having the genotype of all these Danes, we will take one variant by variant, or I should rather say that we will take some of these genes that are actually knocked out, one knocked out gene by gene, and study what their influence on our health is. That is not necessarily only that this gene is associated, or this gene variant is associated with particular disease, but it may be associated with prognosis. It may be associated with response to treatment, to adverse effects of treatment, many other things in combination. And having the genes up here, and let's go one by one and go down in the rich database of Denmark, not only disease specific but also with other stuff, you really can find a lot of new information. You know, some of you, the PCSK9 gene that was found many years ago, that some people have this gene knocked out, and apparently people who have this gene knocked out have a very reduced incidence or level of LDL cholesterol. And based on this finding, now 3 companies, here are presentations from 2, have created monoclonal antibodies to block this gene based on the knowledge they gained from studying the genes. And this is a new target that we or a new drug that we can actually use to target people with high cholesterol levels where statins are not working. So that's just one example. And again, this is a study I just talked about, the GeneLife study that we are trying to implement in Denmark right now. I'll just close by showing another resource that we are building in Denmark, because we have, as in Norway, the birth cohort study. But that study is very big in numbers, but not very detailed in blood specimens. So we are now combining, we're combining 2 important sources of material to study really the unborn child and what happens. So we have the Danish National Birth Cohort, the way you have your birth cohort of 100,000 pregnant women that you now have followed up for many years. But then we have developed a very detailed cohort where we bleed the individual pregnant woman before she becomes pregnant, and every week during pregnancy, and the last week every day before she delivers, and then after delivery. And then we do tens of thousands of omics analysis to actually understand in great detail what happens during pregnancy, so that we will be able to predict disease development during pregnancy, but also of the unborn child. It's so that you actually transfer RNA from all the organ developments in the fetus through the placenta into the bloodstream of the mother. And we actually use that mechanism to actually study free RNA and follow that way the fetal development during pregnancy via these many new specimens. And this is illustrated in more detail, that we take a lot of different things from the mothers in this study. And I'll just close, because my time is up, by showing you that some of the many new results we have out of the study is that based on a blood specimen, we are now able to distinguish every pregnancy week during pregnancy. And can you imagine that in the future we'll just have a blood test taken to distinguish or actually to determine that pregnancy week? But also we have the first signals or results to actually be able to determine what's called analytes that actually are increased for women that later develop preterm delivery. But it could be, all kinds of, adverse effects of pregnancy. And I think you will tomorrow discuss this in much, much more detail. This is a metabolite profile where we use untargeted metabolites analysis of tens of thousands of metabolites, but it could be proteomics instead. It could be RNA-seq. It could be cytokines. All this is so much more informative than the sequence or the genotype of a particular person, and this is the way things are going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We must have time for one question. One burning question there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Beautiful science you're exemplifying. But I'm going back to the infrastructure. So the Danish system is now a kind of data warehouse solution. And my question is really, you have 8+ million in your database. And if we look at the Nordic context, how do you see this developing? And would the other Nordic countries go into that data warehouse, or would you be able to have different similar warehouses in the other Nordic countries and then somehow unite these? Or do you think that Nordic research per se isn't needed when there is a Danish resource?
Unfortunately, I don't think that we will be able to actually transfer data between countries the way we used to do in the old days. Things have changed a lot, but we now have IT solutions that make it possible to nevertheless combine all this data in the cloud and actually work together, all the Nordic countries. And it takes that you have a data warehouse that is centralized kind of for each of the countries to do this in an easy way. And I know that is it Norway who's in charge of the Nordforsk, right, or the Minister of or Nordic Minister of Councils, Council of Nordic Ministers, and you're the chairman, I guess. And there is an initiative to actually build on this. We are many that actually have tried to push this forward for many, many years, and I hope this will come through eventually. This will be done totally anonymous. You will not exchange personal identifiable data this way, but you can actually meet in the cloud, and split seconds later you don't know what data you actually worked with, but you have the results out of that analysis, just to keep it very simple.
Thanks.
Well, again, thank you. Thank you very much.